I've had friends who are producers and DJs that have fallen out of me because I've not played the tune. We just have to make sure that we're impartial. We're not just playing tunes to do a favour to a friend.
Welcome, everybody. Day 2 of IMS Ibiza, and welcome Danny Howard, the one and only.
Thanks.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. I'm glad that there's some people come. Thank you.
Absolutely. Today we're really excited to be sitting down with you. My name's Farah Nanji. I'm a lecturer at Point Blank, which is a music school in London, and we offer degrees in music production and many other subjects. I'm also an artist and podcaster. And we're sitting down with the one and only Danny Howard, a man that's become synonymous with BBC Radio 1. Danny's been an integral part of the BBC family for more than a decade now, and along the way, he's firmly established himself as one of the leading DJs in the world. And this year, you're about to kick off a residency in Amnesia with Sonny Fodera and Gorgon City, which I'm sure you're super excited about.
Can't wait.
And so today we're going to be kind of diving into that journey from him making this serendipitous decision to enter a music competition and how that's led to him becoming one of the top tier presenters at BBC Radio 1. So we're going to explore a lot of the skills necessary to pursue a career in broadcasting, how you started out, how that medium's evolved, and also some of your radio fails. So let's go straight to the beginning. Tell us about your earliest memories of radio and how that inspired you to pursue a career in broadcasting.
This picture, I'll explain that. The earliest memories of radio were actually listening to Pete and Annie on Radio 1 every week, because that was back then the place where you'd listen to or find out what the new hot releases were in dance music, so that was the place to go. So I'd always listen religiously, and that in turn then sort of motivated me to get out and DJ, which is this picture here is one of my first DJ gigs in my student union at Edge Hill Uni. And that's really where it all started, was just getting out and DJing and just listening to Annie and Pete, for the new hot dance tunes.
Amazing. And so in those early days...
I can't remember what the photos are, so I'm okay.
In those early days, what were some of those crucial steps that you took to get your foot in the door of the radio industry? And how did your DJ residency at the Syndicate and Ministry of Sound in Egypt, which is where that picture is taken, help you achieve this?
Crucial steps are literally just doing everything that I can to get myself out there to build momentum, which I think is important when you're starting out in anything that you want to do. So I was offering to play my friends' birthday parties just to get DJ experience, which then would lead to like DJing in bars, and then DJing like warm-up slots in clubs, and I'd also put on my own events as well, just so I could like get experience doing that. Radio actually came a bit later. I'd failed attempts of trying to get into radio. I went to my local radio station in Blackpool, Radio Wave, and asked why they didn't have a dance show on there, and it was because their target audience is 60 plus, so that was a fail. I begged my student union to look at getting the student radio station back up and running just so I could do a show on there, but there wasn't the resources or the funds to do that, so that was fail. So the radio sort of came later and was sort of put on the back burner whilst I pursued a DJ career. And that's where this picture is. I had an opportunity to go to Egypt to DJ for Ministry of Sound as a resident, and spent 3 months there, which was incredible. And then the Syndicate was my local club in Blackpool. At the time, it was actually the biggest, large capacity club in the UK at the time, and it had everyone from like Calvin Harris to Pete and David Guetta, like massive dance names playing there, and I became the resident. So but that was all from perseverance of like putting on my own events and just get myself out there locally with my own events that led to these opportunities. So the answer is crucial steps. Just do everything you can to gather momentum for yourself.
Now, momentum is really important, but equally is mentorship, and you've had some really interesting mentors along the way. So tell us who they were and what role did they play in helping you refine your craft, and what did they tell you in those early days that was so important?
I think to grow in anything, it's important to like learn off people, and it's an even better position if you've got someone there like by your side helping you, which I was fortunate to have. This guy in the middle next to me, Sam, the competition that I did on Radio 1, he actually ran that. and it was him that spotted something in me to be able to do radio. That it was he had this idea to create a demo for Radio 1, and I went down to London and recorded it, and he put it on the boss's desk. So he basically was my mentor, but also like the person that gave the Radio 1 bosses the demo that they never asked for. So he was really important, and he just helped guide me as well from a production side, like in radio as well, and how to be a presenter really. Because when I started Radio 1, I had no radio experience, which is mad to say now. But yeah, he was really important. And then Paul Oakenfold here, it's mad saying that because he's one of the biggest legends in dance music. When I got on Radio 1, had a call from a random number, and it was like, "Hey Danny, it's Paul Oakenfold," and I thought it was one of my mates winding me up, but it was Paul, and he just said he wanted to work with me and help me help grow my profile, not just in the UK but in America. So he helped get me on a radio station there called Sirius XM. So whilst I was doing Radio 1, I was also simultaneously doing a show on like, not the American equivalent because it's different, but a big radio station called Sirius XM, and he helped me do that and get an agent and stuff. So yeah, mentorship is important, but I think that only kicks in properly once you get yourself to a certain point of your journey. You know, because these guys couldn't have made those calls if I hadn't already gathered that momentum that we talked about.
But equally, I think, you know, there is a space for people to actively go out and seek that either way, if, you know, to get those opportunities. And so the first ever radio show at BBC One, do you remember it? And do you remember how different your approach was to curating the show to how it is today?
Yeah, so the first radio show I did on Radio 1, the music was programmed fully by the music team, so that took the pressure off. And I regret wearing that jumper, by the way, because this picture haunts me every time I have an anniversary at Radio 1, but that's my first, about 10 minutes before I'm about to go on air. Oh no, there you go, 40 minutes before I was about to go on air. 4 p.m, live Radio 1. Obviously, I was very nervous, and I remember my producer getting me these tea bags called Moment of Calm, because she thought that would really calm her nerves, and we had to have one of those every week before the show until I finally got comfortable with it. Yeah, I remember the links, the bits where I talk in between the tracks, just writing it out as a script, and I had a thick script like that, and every single thing I said was scripted because I was just so nervous about messing up. And if I was to advise anyone who wants to get into radio, is to learn to not script, because it just sounds really like stiff and not very natural. Now I literally go in with like one sheet of paper, and whatever comes out of my mouth when I put the mic up comes out. But obviously it's taken years to get to that point. But the point is, when you're talking on the radio and you want to get what you're saying on the radio, you need to get feeling across and context, and when you're scripting it, it's hard to do that. So yeah, keep it really natural. But anyway, that first show, I remember my first link was very shouty, and I got through it just about.
And how long did it take you to prepare your first show?
Every show takes me a full week. Even now, like the first show took a full week. Even now, it takes a full week to prepare. I mean, we're going to get into that soon. But yeah, it's still the same amount of prep.
And so, talk to us about some of the biggest challenges you face, not only just at the top, but in your journey to actually getting to that top level of BBC, and how did you overcome some of those challenges?
I guess consistency in terms of the music that you play, and being a good broadcaster is definitely the challenge that I faced when I was trying to just become a credible source of music, because ultimately my job is a tastemaker. So people, when they're listening to my show, I want them to trust that what I'm playing is what they should be hearing. Likewise, the artists that I support, there's so many artists out there. How can you believe that I know what I'm talking about when I'm saying you need to listen to this artist? And that just comes with time and building the relationship with the listeners. I guess the biggest challenge that I faced was when I did dance anthems on a Saturday. I did that for 5.5 years, and that show is all about playing the most mainstream dance music and that's out there. And it's almost like reflective, that show. So whatever's big, that's what we play. Whereas on a Friday night, it's more tastemaker and introducing new music, which is where that trust the listener has to have in me as a tastemaker comes in. And that was the biggest challenge, from shaking off that dance anthems association to then I'm now going to be a credible source of new music. And yeah, that was took a while, but I think I'm there now.
And would you say that taking after Annie Mac was a challenge?
That was a challenge, yeah. Because Annie, and she had 17 years, I think 12 years in that slot, and to go into someone's shoes like that was probably a bit of a naive decision, but an opportunity that I probably never would have had again, and I just had to go for it. And the challenge was going into that slot and not doing the same as what she did, because that wouldn't be authentic on my part, but also giving something that her listeners, her regular listeners, would enjoy, but also putting my stamp on it as well. So and that took actually about 6 months. The first 3 months I felt a bit lost. I felt like I was doing it all wrong and the music wasn't right, and we changed a lot, and then settled into it sort of 6 months in, and now I feel like it's got its own identity.
Absolutely. And so apart from the music obviously being always on point, what are some of the other selections and criteria that comes to your mind when you're selecting new artists or artists in general to showcase on the show?
So I'll just talk about the remit of my show is to play the biggest new dance music, whether that be the artist profile or if a tune is big and has got the potential to go all the way. So I guess we're just looking for, obviously, music that has originality, obviously, sounds big, has all the energy that you need for a Friday night, and of course across the track selection we look for, we have to make sure we're diverse and we're representing all artists, and yeah, it's a real sort of puzzle to put together, and it's a long process, but yeah, those are the things we look for, basically quality of music, and yeah, if it will sound big on a Friday, it has the energy.
And do you do a little bit of research on the artist brand?
Yeah, always, because I think if you're gonna play an artist on something like Radio 1, you have to you have to do your due diligence and make sure that the artist has got ambitions to grow a career, and that you look into the background of what they're about and get to know them, because I guess when you're playing a track on the radio, I want to be able to tell the audience who might have not heard of a new artist who this person is and what makes them interesting and why I should listen to them, and just tell a bit of a story, really, and that's what we're looking for. I think if you've got two tracks that are neck and neck, and I look into both artists and one artist has more about them than the other, probably will go for the one that's got the story and got the clear ambition to become something bigger.
Do you ever communicate with them before or at any point in that journey?
Sometimes, yeah, because some artists obviously send tunes direct. I do try and give feedback a lot because I think it helps. Even the big artists still appreciate and still want to know when they're going to get a track played on Radio 1. So, yeah, there's pluggers who are the people that promote the tracks on behalf of labels and artists that we have relationships with and we deal with every week. And I always try and feedback it, even if it's just saying that we're going to play it. Sometimes I'll try and give more feedback than that because I know it means a lot to the artist and to the labels. So, yeah, communication is important.
Definitely. And of course, the BBC is the BBC. It's such a huge institute. And so I'm really curious to know how you balance, creativity as an artist, as a DJ, and the commercial maybe pressures or success that comes with your work, and how that balance has evolved over time.
It has been tricky, actually, because obviously a lot of people know me from the Radio 1 show and what I play on Radio 1, but at the same time, I'm like parallel to that, I'm also a DJ, and I think a lot of people would be surprised, not surprised, but like sometimes people are surprised when they turn up to a gig and they're not hearing me play what I play on the radio. It's not completely different. Obviously, there are crossovers, but it has been a challenge. But I guess the power of Radio 1 is something that is a platform for me that obviously gets my name out there and helps me get out as a DJ. So it definitely benefits, but I've just got to make sure that when I'm DJing, I'm playing what I want to play, and hopefully over time people will come to know the sound, which I think they are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the audience. How do you approach building and maintaining that relationship with your listeners? And what strategy does the BBC use to kind of cultivate a very highly loyal and engaged audience, especially when there's such a minefield of content there to navigate from, these days?
I know. I think the only thing you can do is just make sure that you are. I said it earlier, just being consistent and you're putting out the best radio show you can. I know it's a cliche when you're saying you're only as good as your last song, but I really believe that every time I approach a radio show, it's just like make sure that show is as good as it can be, and it's got the best tunes in, and that's how you develop a relationship, because people subscribe on BBC Sounds to the show, or they'll actually tune in live to listen as part of their routine, and as long as you're delivering every single time and not just phoning it in or throwing it together, that's what's going to get the trust. Obviously, you got to use social media, so being really active on there, which I don't need to say to you guys, everyone knows it. So that's how you keep it engaged, really. And also being out and about DJing and playing, getting my face out there really helps as well, because people sometimes don't even know what I look like when they hear me on the radio. So getting out and DJing and being about as much is really important.
And talking about evolving, radio as a medium has of course changed and evolved so much over time. But yet the BBC has held its incredibly strong and position in that field, and is of course a leader in the radio space. But there's also a lot more shows and other media formats to compete with now that the barriers to entry are so much lower than they once were. So what are the three things that you think have helped the BBC to maintain its position?
Authenticity, definitely. Everything we do, I like to think, is authentic. Impartiality is a big one. You might hear that word a lot with the BBC, but it's funny because I've had friends that who are producers and DJs that have fallen out of me because I've not played the tune. It's annoying, and it might make me sound like a bad friend, but it's more that we just have to make sure that we're impartial. We're not just playing tunes to do a favour to a friend, or I'm not playing tunes so that I get a gig or I make money off it, or like have any commercial gain at all. So I think that's really important. And I think personality is the other thing I would say. One thing I'm really proud of about working at Radio 1 is not just on the dance shows, but all the shows, is when you listen, you're going to get the best music, but you're also going to get the best entertainment as well, if that's what you're looking for. A bit of personality. It's not just like a soulless, faceless playlist. And I think whether you're into that or not, but I think that's what the beauty of radio is just like having that connection with the presenter and feeling like you know them and that you trust them, and that's what I think as well. So personality, impartiality, and authenticity. What's
your biggest radio fail?
Anything that involves this man, Dead Mouse. I've eaten a few pies that summer as well. So, Dead Mouse. We have a love-hate relationship. So my first ever big interview was 2012. It was in Hackney for our big weekend. And my producer said, we've secured an interview with Dead Mouse. And I was like, buzzing. This is my first big interview. He's a massive name, big fan. And it's going to be on his tour bus. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. So went on his tour bus, sat opposite him about the same distance we are now. And he lit up a cigarette and he's like smoking, like blowing it in my face. And I was like, just let that go. And then, the interview was a disaster. He was swearing. He wasn't very forthcoming. He told me to Google one answer. He's like, Google it. I was like, Okay, and as a new presenter, like 3 months into Radio 1, with hardly any experience, that was quite hard to deal with. Traumatic, actually. And I came off the tour bus and his manager said, well, don't worry, last week you made another radio presenter cry. So I was like, okay, well, at least that's something. But fair to say, the interview didn't air. And then about 5 years later, the opportunity came up to interview him again. But it wasn't on the radio, it's for BBC Introducing Live. So it was like a panel like this. And it was the big headline, like, interview. You're going to interview Deadmau5. And I was like, right, he's not getting me this time. And it was recorded, and he did. He got me again. I guess the learning that I've taken from this is, with someone like him, how's the nice way of putting it? He's just an awkward character, and he knows that, and you're going to deal with awkward characters, and he's not just being awkward for the sake of it, he just is. But that particular interview, BBC Introducing Live, it was an hour interview, and I had 30 questions, and I thought, right, 2 minutes or so per question, that should be enough. And he just literally whizzed through all the answers, giving me nothing. And after half an hour, I'd run out of questions. I had to wing it for the last half an hour. But so that was a bit of a fail. But the learning that I took from that was just maybe over prepare. So if you are doing radio, want to get into radio, if you're doing an interview, prepare more questions than you actually need.
And did his team ever say anything about not airing the interview in that process?
No, but because they knew how bad it was and how upset I was with it. Fair
enough. Now you touched upon earlier that it takes a week to prepare a show. So can you kind of walk us through that typical week in the life of a BBC Radio 1 presenter?
Yeah. Okay. So Monday and Tuesday is when I go for all the music and listen to all the promos that come in. Everything gets sent across then, and then we have a Google Doc grid that me and my team share, and we all throw suggestions into this grid in no particular order, just music that we like. We then have a music meeting on Wednesday to discuss what's going to make it into the show. And then we have a list of recurrent tracks, which is all tunes that we've already played before. What do we want to play again? What do we want to keep supporting? And then we put it into an order that makes sense in terms of... so like earlier in the show, the first hour will be the more commercial, mainstream, bigger tunes. So like your Calvin Harris's and like Eliza Rose, Ella System, all the big like mainstream dance tunes. And then hour two will be more like the newer stuff. But I wanted to sort of show how we put it together. So the first hour is 2 half-hour blocks. And the reason for that is, and it's pre-mixed half-hour blocks. So, and the reason for that is so that it keeps it nice and tight. It means we can get more tunes in as well, and it means that, it keeps the pace up of the show. It just makes it sound energetic and exciting. So, get out of the way here. This bottom one here is like a little screenshot of the like 1 half-hour chunk, and then I've just zoomed in there. So that is this section here. So this is all nice and mixed, and then I would like loop a section for like a minute. So that's when you'll hear me come in and talk and say whatever I want to say. And then this here is just a demonstration of how I'd get from like drum and bass to a house tune, just changing the tempo. Really simple. But I didn't want to go too technical and do like a live demonstration. I just wanted to literally show how it would look on an Ableton screen in terms of how I lay the tracks out. And then, putting in talk pockets, changing tempos. And that's a really simple overview of how the show comes together. And then the second hour is smaller chunks, maybe like 10, 15-minute blocks and individual tracks as well, just to give me the freedom to come in and out and, say what I want to say and maybe swap the order a bit, depending on how I'm feeling.
And something interesting, and it could be a challenge as well, is that you literally have only those 60 seconds, right? You can't go above talking that for that.
It sounds better when I do keep to the time. Sometimes I don't, but... that's the thing with Radio 1. Like you have complete freedom, but we just choose to do it this way because it sounds cleaner and sounds sort of tighter. But on like commercial radio, that you have your talk pocket, and that is it. You cannot talk out of it. So, yeah, I try to keep to it.
And so then this gets mixed down, gets sent to the BBC, and then
yeah.
Thursday,
So I'll
Friday.
bounce these down, send them all to my production team. They'll load them into the system, and then I'm literally just like putting the fader up of one of the blocks, hitting play, and then just reading the messages that are coming in. Looking at the tunes coming up, thinking what I'm going to talk about, making notes, bullet points. Because I think when you're doing a link, it's important to at least have some idea what you're going to say. I know I said earlier whatever comes out my mouth comes out, but that was basically saying that I don't have a script. It's more when you're about to go into link, just like have an idea of what you want to cover, and also know what your out is going to be. I think that's some really important advice that I got when I first started, is know what the out is, because even if you're waffling on and you don't know what you're saying, you know what the end point is. So that's a good bit of advice I would like to recommend.
Amazing. And actually a question I'd love to ask you is, do you get more listeners listening back through the actual iPlayer, or is it more listeners now tuning in live to the show?
Live to the show, there's still about 1 million, which scares the shit out of me when I think about it. On BBC Sounds, it's growing fast. Like obviously the way we consume content now and the way we listen, on-demand listening is definitely on the rise, and our boss definitely reminds us of that every year when we have our presenter meeting. But ultimately, people still listen linear and live the most.
Interesting. So as you look back on it all, more than a decade now, and I'm sure there's been so many memorable moments along the way, but what's the one thing that really stands out to you?
So many moments. The artists that I've had the pleasure of interviewing, Carl Cox, my DJ hero, he came on the show. We did a back-to-back, interviewed Avicii, all these big names, and but this moment will always be the one that I think back to when I've one day left Radio 1. I think back to my time. This will be the photo that I always think of. So this photo is actually used quite a lot. If you Google Radio 1 Ibiza, this one comes up a lot because, as you can see, it's quite epic. It's when we did a Cafe Mambo. We set the stage up on the rocks, and this is actually during my back-to-back set with Camel Fat. And yeah, it was. I don't know how many people are there. I think we scheduled for maybe like 5,000 to turn up, and I think there's about 8 or 9 on there because you see it just goes all the way up there, and yeah, it was just an incredible night. And when we do Radio 1 Ibiza, it's always special. That year particular was.
So knowing everything that you know now, what advice would you give to someone who's considering a career in radio, and how can they best prepare themselves to set up for success?
Is just to, like we said earlier in this chat, like create momentum for yourself. One thing I did do actually that I didn't mention was I used to do DJ mixes, but like as a radio show. I wouldn't do like a full radio. I'd like do like a little bit of talking at the start, maybe the middle and the end. So it's like a music podcast in a way, and that's one way I would recommend to do that, because obviously you've got like Mixcloud, SoundCloud. Anyone can upload mixes now. I would definitely start doing that. And just share it on social media, get your friends, family, anyone that'll listen to it, and basically just make a start, and also maybe like community radio, online radio. Look to see if there's anything that you can get into that way, and yeah, that's what I'd say. Just get up and do it, basically.
Amazing. So we have one final question before we move to audience Q&A. But how do you see the future of radio evolving? It's obviously gone through a humongous shift in the last couple of decades. And what role would you like to be a part of in that evolution?
I see radio... Oh, this picture, amazing. I think radio still is important as much as it always was in terms of breaking artists and new music. Again, it comes back to that, the realness of it, the connection with the presenter, the trust in what you're listening to, which you don't really get on streaming platforms or social media. Obviously, there's a lot more competition now, but I think radio is a sort of true like barometer of what really does connect, because there's a lot of things on TikTok and Instagram, music-wise, that doesn't really work for radio, and therefore might not really work in a club. It just works as that 15 or 30-second little piece of music, but as an actual record and actually, connected with someone and making someone move, it doesn't always work. So I think radio has a big part to play in that as well, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So as much as these social media platforms are growing and streaming is becoming, is obviously very important, radio is a true reflection of what we're listening to, what we should be listening to, and in terms of dance music, what's happening in the clubs.
And what role do you want to play in that evolution in the future? How long do you see yourself doing this?
For as long as radio will have me, I guess. I've been lucky enough to be there for 11 years now, and I do think about, and my goal was to always get to the slot that I'm doing. 6 p.m. Friday night is the ultimate slot for a radio dance DJ. I never actually thought I'd make it there, but then when Annie left and they offered it me, it was obviously a dream come true. So hopefully I'll do that for a few more years, and then we'll see. But I'll always, no matter what I'm doing as a DJ, I'll always want to do radio now. It's I literally live for it every single week, and it's just amazing to be able to discover new music, discover new artists, and be able to help them, give them the platform that they need to go on and have their own success.
Absolutely. And one final question that I
You just thought of this, haven't you?
Yeah, I did, yes. But, it's really interesting, obviously, because you're a radio presenter and DJ, but you're also a DJ. So how does your mixing technique change between both?
It was different because obviously when you DJing in a club, you can see the people. Radio is just about keeping it tight and quick, so you won't have long transitions with radio unless it's like an essential mix or an actual guest mix. When I'm scheduling the mixes or putting together the mixes, it'll be like 4 bars and then into the next tune, just really, really quick. Whereas obviously in a DJ set, you want to create more of a journey and have longer transitions. So yeah, that's the difference.
Nice. So thank you, Danny. If anyone has any questions, we'd love to ask them.
Oh,
gentleman.
Cool. Right back to what you just said. For like the radio show, you prefer, and you think it sounds better to keep the transitions tight versus, the longer lengthy.
I think so. Unless before, I showed you that loop. Unless you're creating like a talk pocket, then yeah, I would say certainly for my show, it's about keeping the listener interested and keeping it sounded fun and high energy. And with long transitions, you risk sucking that energy out, I think. Because I think, it's like when you've been in the car with someone and they're flicking through the radio stations, like, because they don't like a song.
Especially when you're breaking new music, right? You want them to hear just that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Skills, right?
Yeah, so that's the reason why I do that.
Any other questions?
Every single Friday to be on the radio on one place. Is it for you chance to pre-record your show? Then you have another gig or...
Oh, right. No, I always do it live. Always do it live. So tomorrow I'm going to fly back and do the show live. Yeah, it's about, and it sort of goes back to what I say about like radio being king compared to streaming and social media music wise, because it's real, it's reactive. People texting in, there's nothing better than a shout on radio. It's like feeling that you connected with the audience and then feeling connected with you and being able to talk about what's going on that weekend. And it feels better and more exciting. And there's nothing worse than having to record a Friday night dance show on a Monday morning. It's just not the same energy. So yeah, I know some people have to do it and that's fine, but personally, live. Yeah, it just means I can't DJ really on a Friday unless it's near London. So, but it's a compromise I'm willing to make.
I've got a question here. How would you compare the pressure of being a broadcast DJ to a performing DJ? And is there anything you do to get yourself in the zone before you play or you're on broadcasting? Because I presume, broadcasting to millions of people on BBC is quite a nerve-wracking experience, especially in your early career. So could you maybe share some insight about that?
I think if you're early in your career and you do get nervous before you go on, just Yeah, I think you just need to. The one bit of advice I got, which is a bit of a 101 if you're already into radio, is don't think about the amount of people you're broadcasting to. Imagine that it's just you and your best mate. So like me and you in the room. I'm just talking to you, and I'm playing you this song, and when you hear me talk on the radio, rarely I will refer to you lot or all you people. I will always say like you, because radio, when you're listening, can be like quite a personal thing, quite an intimate thing sometimes, and you sort of want the radio presenter to feel like they're talking to you, and I guess that's a great tip to take on board for when you're broadcasting, but it's also a great tip for if you are feeling a bit anxious about how many people you potentially might be speaking to. Funnily enough, I actually get more nervous DJing, because I can see the people. Like, I'm actually more nervous about this than when I go on air on a Friday. Friday night now, because I've done it for so long, I'll literally be talking to my producer with 10 seconds to go, and then I'll just put my headphones on and go, because it's just natural to me. But if I could see the people, I'd be in the toilet. Honestly, it's different.
Other than the tunes that you select and play, and your intuition and your knowledge about your subject matter, I guess one of your secret weapons would be your voice. How do you handle your voice when you go on air?
It's a good question. I don't just project, smile. I don't know if you've heard that tip before. Someone said it to me before I started radio. I thought it was a bit crazy, but it actually works. If you smile when you talk, it just has a more positive effect on when you talk. What you would expect, just try and speak as clearly as possible, which I don't always do. And I guess just, like I said before, have in your mind what it is you want to say, so you don't end up waffling and just going off on a tangent, really. So yeah, and during the summer, if you are a touring DJ, the vocal zones, these little pastels, I swear by them in the summer.
Staying hydrated, of course.
And staying hydrated with water.
Question over there?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Danny and Martin. Just wondering, what's the biggest number one challenge you face at the BBC and with your radio show, and how do you see it kind of progressing over the next 5 to 10 years?
Are you alluding to a certain thing, like in terms of listeners and competition, or just in general?
Just really in general, Danny. I mean, the media industry, I'm not actually connected to it, so I'm asking from an unconnected standpoint, really. But just obviously, just the rapid growth of tech and the rapid growth.
The challenge is to keep people listening and make sure when people want to listen to the radio, they choose Radio 1, and when they want dance music, they choose Friday night. So it is a challenge, and it's down to us as the presenters to make sure. Obviously, we're delivering great content and great radio shows, but doing everything outside of radio, in terms of DJing, social media, just to make sure people are engaged and they know about us. It's just about shouting loudly. And as time goes on and the more tech gets bigger, we're having to shout even louder and just make sure we're visible on everything to bring people back into the radio show, ultimately.
Definitely. Rob.
Hi, Rob. I've got a question. You've been doing the show a long time. Are there moments where you're about to do the show of the day but you don't feel well or you've got low energy? How do you, obviously you can't go on radio, but low energy is no good. So how do you get yourself out of that? There must be times where you don't feel well, you've had a night out or whatever. And how do you...
What makes you think I do that?
How then do you kind of get yourself in the zone?
Well, it's purely because I love it and it's my passion. So it actually doesn't take much for me to get up for it. And if we all have bad days, we all have days where we feel low, and sometimes ill. I've never called in ill, I don't think, but I've just always dragged myself there, even if I have. And it's like as soon as you start the show, it's just the adrenaline kicks in. So there's no real advice I can give other than tell you what the reality is, which is that the passion is what gets me out the door into the studio, and then once the adrenaline kicks in, it carries you through, and then as soon as you finish the show, you feel shitty again. So yeah,
You get through the show.
and
it's
yeah,
fine,
honestly, it's hard. It's hard. It sounds like a bit wishy-washy, but it really is the case. Like you just because you love it and you want to be there, it doesn't really take much. So yeah.
Thank you.
Have you ever missed one show?
No, I don't. I'm looking at Anna from our management team over there. I don't think I have. No, I mean I get 5 weeks holiday a year, and I don't even use them. So yeah, I just love it. I do 1 show a week, and obviously we're all entitled to holidays, but I just love it so much. I hate taking time off. So yeah.
Nice. It's like F1 drivers. If you take the time off, someone else is going to take that seat.
Exactly.
Any more questions? Yeah.
You spoke about the 2 personalities you are. Is there some pressure from maybe clients or bookings that someone maybe book you because of your name from radio, and then he is excited like, oh.
No, because when we get people asking to play a gig, we have a system where I have an agent, I have a management team, and they act as like a filtering process to make sure it's the right kind of show that I want to play as a DJ. Obviously, the association with Radio 1 benefits that. But on my show, I play drum and bass, but I will never play drum and bass in a club because that's just not what I do. I think most people that book me know that I'm going to go and play house music. So, no, I have a good filtering process.
Amazing. Any more questions? We've got a couple more minutes. Down the back, and then we'll come to you.
Hi, Danny.
Hi.
You were talking a lot about how like the responsibility you feel towards your audience and your listeners. So I was just wondering, like maybe even percentage-wise, what do you feel is more important, especially having a Friday night show where people are getting ready to go out? Is it introducing them to new music, or is it just getting their weekend started properly? Because you can kind of control the start of someone's weekend.
Well, I'd say personally it's more important for my passion is to introduce new music and new artists, but it's actually more important to reflect what the mood of the nation is, and that is to get them ready for a Friday night. But with that comes an amazing power almost that because that's what the remit of the show is, means that we have more listeners because it appeals to a wider market. So when I do play a new artist or a new tune, it moves the needle more because there's more listeners. Whereas if I just played all new music in my slot, it would not appeal to the wider market, which is why I have the later shows as well. So like mine's more mainstream, but when I do play a new track, it has more impact. And then it gets later, then Sarah will go newer. And then the later you get a Radio 1, that's when it gets more and more specialist. And those shows are really, really important. And almost act as like a filtering process. So sometimes a new artist or a new track might not start on my show. It might start on Sarah, or it might start on Jaguar. They might play it a few times, then they'll message me saying, have you heard this? It's getting a really good reaction. Then I'll go, let's give it a go. And then I'll go on my show and go, you might have heard this on Sarah and Jaguar. They love it. You might love it, and so there's a real good sort of ecosystem of the way that we filter music through the shows at Radio 1, which I'm really happy with at the moment.
And what about in COVID? I mean, did your selection for music change in terms of the energy perspective?
No, yes, but almost like, sorry, that was really on the fence. Yes, it changed, but positively. We almost doubled down, like, in terms of like energy, because people were obviously we wanted to make it feel like Friday night, but even more so, like, because people were obviously in the kitchens and they couldn't go out, whatever, and we didn't soften it or pull back at all. We almost like went in even more.
Generally, you're open to most types of house.
Yeah, of course, any type of electronic music, not just house.
I did say yes already.
Yeah.
Great, and that's all we have time for. So thank you so much, Danny.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.